Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for staying with us. We move now into our second panel discussion with representatives from the commercial banking sector. On our panel, we have Mr. Venus Frith, Corporate Manager at Republic Bank Limited, Mr. Richard Lewis, General Manager at First Citizens Bank, and Natalia Rahamatullah, SMA Resource Center Specialist at JMMB Bank. This session will be moderated by Dr. Kieran Swift, Project Development Consultant at Compete Caribbean. Dr. Swift, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Mandisa, and good morning to everyone. So Natalia, Robin, Venus, I think we're ready to go. Given that you all are representing banks, and we know that banks often collect a lot of flack when it comes to the whole discussion of financing innovation, I'm hoping that you brought your armor this morning. Because I see a lot of questions already started coming into the chat about this area. So I want to start off with, sort of a broad question, given where we are right now in terms of this pandemic and crisis, not just in terms of a pandemic, but crises in general are often triggers for new innovations. Have local firms been approaching your institutions to either seek funding or other products to support the innovations that they want to bring to the market, either to keep themselves afloat or to respond to new opportunities that have presented themselves? Venus, let's start with you.
Good morning. I would say that, yes, we have been seeing some customers coming to request financing for innovative products or services or change in their business model. Whether it's widespread, I wouldn't say that you're seeing as much of that. You're more seeing customers looking towards adjusting cash flows to suit what is the new normal level of revenues they are actually experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Where you do see customers coming to seek financing for innovative products or services, it's really as a result of customers that would have had plans since before COVID and would have already engaged in discussions with bank. But COVID, the pandemic, actually sought to firm in their minds the need to innovate, the need to leverage on economies of scale or go outside to export markets to support their business expansion, given what has been happening in the local market as a result of the pandemic. So it's not as widespread, and where you do see it happening, it would have been a thought that would have been taking place before. I can say, however, that most of the discussions with even existing SMEs, you would see that they have now increased their awareness to innovate, even though they have not gotten to the point where they are actually seeking financing at this point in time. So based on the discussions that I'm having with customers, you can tell that there will be this new thrust towards looking to change the way you do business, to bring new products and services to the market, especially when you are looking to go into export markets.
Thanks, Venus. Natalia, you represent one of the more recent additions to the commercial banking landscape in JMMB in Trinidad. What is your take on that question?
Well, to answer your question, my answer is actually pretty similar to Venus's, in that the SMEs that come to us that are really requiring that kind of funding right now are the SMEs who need assistance with their cash flows, with trying to keep afloat. However, we've also seen some SMEs dependent on the industry that they're in and how easily they've been able to pivot during the whole lockdown and pandemic period, that they would be the ones to access or want to access financing right now. So for example, we see a lot of the sanitation companies trying to access financing to either bring in products, related to the pandemic, or I mean, I could go into more detail, but it really is dependent on the industry that you're in and how easily those companies have been able to pivot, that we see that access, that, we would see them wanting to access financing for innovation specifically.
Sure, thanks for that. Depending on time, we may circle back to get some more of that detail. But for now, Robin, what has been your experience at First Citizens in terms of your clients reaching out and seeking either financing rather, or other products to support innovation?
Sure. And thank you, moderator. And morning and welcome to all our guests and all our participants and to the team. Yes, I will say definitively, yes, we've seen a definite increase in requests for funding, more so from securing, I would say, short-term funding to retool and to, for want of a better word, innovate in this pandemic. Two things I'll say. We First Citizens did not, for want of a better word, or wasn't one of the bigger players in the SME market within recency, but we've piggybacked off of the SME government program. We've done a lot of work in writing the program and assisting the government in drafting the program, and we've launched it in I would say somewhere June, July, and I would tell you that there's very good response and there's a good uptick in that particular area. So yes, we are seeing responses to the new SME, for want of a better word, Government of Trinidad and Tobago loan financing program. I have also seen a number of requests coming in for restructures and for funding to help retool businesses in the SME sector. There's a huge push towards innovation on the other side too. So I wouldn't say it's one approach. I'd say it's a two-pronged approach, because it is just not product and or retooling your business. It's about giving momentum to your sales side and opportunities, expanding opportunities, given the limited customer interaction. So two sides: opportunities for funding under the SME program, additional opportunities for funding under our traditional funding mechanisms and restructuring, and the innovation piece. We've hardly been able to keep up with demands for devices and for the new, for want of a better word, methodologies. There's a huge push towards that, and I'll explain that when we get to innovation a little more.
Sure, thanks for that, Robin. You touched on a couple quite interesting things there. One being, the changes that your bank, your institution has undergone in the context of this pandemic to sort of respond and to better assist SMEs as they try to develop their business, to retool and so on, and to increase their exports. So we do want to pick up on that, but one of the things you also touched on, actually no, let's follow through on that point right away. So you've spoken about this government program. Tell us a bit more about that, and tell us about some of the other modifications, some of the other changes that First Citizens has made to the products and services that you offer to address and to support the SMEs.
Sure. So the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and this is not First Citizens alone, though, all banks in Trinidad and Tobago have signed on to a memorandum, which is delivering funding to SMEs, and there's a criteria which I'll quickly go through. I won't spend time on the criteria because the criteria is on all the sites, the Ministry of Finance websites and all the banks' websites. But there's a huge opportunity. There's $300 million sitting down available to SMEs to help them through this pandemic. And in my short history in the bank, spanning over 30 plus years, I haven't seen as competitive a package as this. And it basically says you can access, based on various levels, funding up to a maximum of $325,000, depending on the size of your business, once you generate revenue of between $1 million and $20 million. And it's quite competitive because the government of Trinidad and Tobago is paying the interest for the 5-year period. They're paying the interest on the loan. and so you're not responsible for payment or interest at all, and you don't start payments until the 25th month. So you have 2 years within which to get yourself back on your footing. I think it's one of the government is guaranteeing 75% of the program. So whatever loan you apply for, the government is guaranteeing 75% of that. I think it's a very competitive. There are, however, challenges with SMEs, and the real traditional challenges still remain. And the basic things is you have to pay your tax, you have to bring your VAT up to date, you have to pay your NIS, and you have to get your financials in order. That is traditionally what you have to do for a business to run anyway. But we've seen a lot of issues with people not having their records up to date. So that is the challenge the bank is having to distribute the funding. The funding is a program, it's a government program, so it's not a bank program. But we administer the program for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's one aspect of it. I think there are a number of available funding mechanisms in the sector. There's $100 million sitting on credit unions where people can apply those under the $1 million sales mark. So all the SMEs that are below that, you have $100 million sitting on the credit unions that they can avail themselves of a minimum of $15,000 to the credit unions. And then they also have money sitting in grants in microfinance. So there are 3 different ways that you can get money as we speak today, and that's just money to run your business. Banks have also given support via deferrals, restructuring, refinancing, and a number of other things. So there are huge opportunities for SMEs to avail themselves of mechanisms to help you through this pandemic. My thing is look for what best suits your situation, talk to your banker, and get guidance on what is available through the grants that are in the government sector.
Thank you, Robin. Natalia, I want to take that question to you, because as Robin just spoke about, it isn't just sometimes financing, but other sources of support that banks have brought to the fore. So what has been JMMB's experience? What changes have your bank made within recent times to better assist SMEs?
Right. Well, to be honest with you, Kieran, this is the SME thrust at JMMB Bank is something that has been in the making for about 2 years, right? But we've recognized throughout that time that SMEs are really specialized in the kind of support that they need, right? And it's only become more apparent with the advent of the pandemic. So what JMMB Bank has done in addition to the deferrals and stuff like that Robin would have spoken to a little bit earlier, is that we've started to build out this SME resource center. And basically, in order to access the resource center, you have to be a business banking client of JMMB, right? So the resource center, just to give a little background, is the part of the SME unit that provides that internal capacity building support. So in terms of business development, like if you needed assistance with creating that business plan or even updating it, beefing it up, that's something that we help with internally. We also assist with creating your financial statements. You know, that is also a pitfall that we see. A lot of SMEs don't have their records in place when they come to the bank for financing. So the resource center is really there to help build them up so that they are able to access the financing they need in order to grow. And what we've also done is we've started reaching out to different partners within the SME ecosystem. So like the Kariri, the Export TT, accountants, tax advisors, legal services, marketers, right? And we've developed relationships with them such that if we recognize that our clients, you know, in our needs assessment with them, if they need specific assistance in one area, we're able to refer them directly to those partners to get the assistance that they need at discounted rates, right? And from that should help, you know, build them up and get them to a point where, you know, they're able to translate the commercial viability of their product or their company to access the financing that they need. So that would be the biggest thing that we've done, in addition to all the traditional deferrals and stuff like that.
Thanks, Natalia. Venus, you're up next. So we've already heard of deferrals and so on. We've heard about JMMB's SME unit. What has Republic Bank been doing to better support SMEs as they seek to grow their businesses, to react and to respond, and to push further into exports?
Yes, well, apart from the things that Robin would have mentioned, which would have been generic to all banks, we would have tried to reach out to our customers, not just with financing tools, however, with other things that would help them enhance their business. Now, Republic Bank has been in the SME space for a very, very long time. It is something that we hold dearly to us in trying to assist our SME customers. And over the years, we would have done many things. One of the things that we would have done within the last few years is holding an increased amount of trade missions, where we would have made connections with our other counterparts in other regions of the Caribbean, as well as in Ghana. And we would have taken businessmen from Trinidad to those areas to meet businessmen from that area, so that way they can make connections. We would have also invited government officials, legal fraternities, so customers will be able to get information on how to get into these markets from the source, the market that they want to get into. Those are some of the things that we would have done in the past few years. With the advent of COVID, of course, social distancing requirements, we can't hold trade missions to that effect. So what we would have developed within recent times is an SME toolkit, which is something that customers could access on our website, and it will allow them to get information, different resources, access to webinars as it comes up. There are lots of templates and tools that help them to do some of the things that we see as some of the common pitfalls, as it will help them be able to do cash flow projections, prepare financial statements. All those things are actually available on our SME toolkit to assist SMEs in enhancing their presentation of information and their reporting. Apart from that, we would have revamped in June, we would have revamped our ePay e-commerce service to allow customers to be able to actually get payments via e-commerce without even having a website. Why that would be beneficial? Of course, it allows you don't have a website, it now allows you to be able to get in touch with even a wider base of customers. If you're exporting, customers in export markets can actually now go on the site and make payments to you without you actually having to have a website. Outside of that, although this is not a modification to our suite of products or services, our branch bank network throughout the Caribbean, I mean, it is well known that we would have acquired some Scotia operations going up the islands, and we were expanding our network. That actually allows us to employ creative financing mechanisms, whereby you can actually leverage on assets that you have in Trinidad to be able to support borrowing in the host country, and you actually be able to get financing there in the currency that you need across there. So if you're doing something in a country where you need EC dollars and we have a bank there, you can leverage on those assets here. We provide something called a standby letter of credit to the bank across there. You'll be able to actually probably get an overdraft facility against that standby letter of credit and access EC in that market to do what you need to do. So those are some of the things that we would have employed that would be able to assist SMEs greatly in going forward.
Thank you, Venus. Now, we're running out of time for this segment before we get into Q&A, but that last point you ended on there leads very well into probably the final question I'll pose to the panel, which has to do with this whole issue of foreign exchange. And obviously, access to foreign exchange, it's typically pointed to as being a major hindrance for SMEs. People use it as a code for access to US dollars, particularly, rather than foreign exchange generally. Now, this has been discussed and documented all over the place, so we're not going to go over all of it here, but are there some lesser known or some practices that not enough SMEs undertake to access foreign exchange that they should be aware of? And Robin, I'll bounce that one to you first. And Robin, you're muted, so we're missing the wisdom.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I would just point to solutions very quickly. You as an SME, you have to leverage the regional markets and the other Latin American markets to really look at new sources of FX. There's no way in the short term, in my mind, that we can solve the issue of FX or currency to supply businesses. The government has put some money in Exim Bank. You all will be very familiar with the July CBTT 2020 last volume of its productions, and it said that if I am to quote from that, 8.8 months of cover, and that's inclusive of the HSNE fund that was in there. That's not a very good picture. So you have to look at external sources of FX. You have to look at exporting product and or services, not only product but services within in our intra-regional. The other thing that I would suggest we do is we have to hedge against other currencies. It's not only US currency. If you try to hedge against other currencies, it's widely known in the market. We could trade, we still do trade in an EC currency, and more recently in J dollars, Jamaican dollars. You have to look at how you could leverage these other currencies to provide you with external sources of FX supply. The other thing I'd say to you is the SMEs is, look, you have to look at your current supplier arrangements and see how you could source stuff from larger distributors regionally and in Trinidad and Tobago and locally, because there's simply it's a finite amount of FX, and there's a strict regime around distribution in the country right now. So the problem is not going to solve in the short term, but I can tell you I have seen customers that have expanded their operations in the short term, first in the region, Caribbean wide. They've deployed resources, they've deployed personnel, they actually set up shop in a couple of small islands, and that using those islands as revenue sources, albeit small for the time being, to contribute to the FX needs. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Robin. I think with that, we just out of time for this segment. So Venus and Natalia, perhaps during the Q&A, if time permits, we could circle back to that question. But for now, let's address some of the questions that have been posed by the participants. Firstly, is there guidance available to SMEs who would like help in understanding which funding or financial options would be best for them? Any of the panel members could address that one first.
If I could just take it quickly, and Natalia, you could jump in. My first stop is, look, you have business bankers in the sector. I have a SME unit that is established with some very experienced bankers. It's a simple call, and we could guide you along. The Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Finance has a very clear document on its website as to what is available. It tells you where the money is, and you can direct you to those. I downloaded that information from the Ministry of Finance website. But there are non-traditional sources that you need to understand. So Export TT, TTMA, Ministry of Agriculture, ADB are sources of revenue. There are grants outside there for a lot of things that we don't know about. So my guidance to the SMEs, go onto these websites. I was scanning Ministry of Agriculture websites a week ago, subsequent to the budget, to understand what funding is available. And I mean, they have some very good packages outside there to for want of a better word, putting on security for your and call it greenhouses, to fund equipment, to start up new projects. So I would say to you, Ministry of Trade and Industry and Commerce, Ministry of Agriculture, the TTMA, Export TT, and Exim Bank are resources that you can use to get additional information to understand what is available for you in the Trinidad and Tobago landscape.
Thank you. Natalia, you're going to weigh in there?
Sure, yeah, and I concur with everything that Robin said. It's really about, you know, speaking to your banker. They are gonna have the layout of the land then, right? And if you have a conversation with them, and dependent on where you're at in your company's life cycle, they could advise you on the traditional financing products that would be most suitable to you, as well as the non-traditional financing in terms of grant funding, equity, investment, that kind of thing. So it's really about having that open conversation with your business banker. If you don't have one, I suggest you get one. And really explore the opportunities that are available in the landscape. The Export TT, Kariri, the Exim Bank, you know. All of these agencies are there to help the SMEs grow, and you're not going to be able to access any of those things if you don't know what's happening. So talk to your banker, do your own research, and I don't see why you won't be able to access any of those things to help you grow.
Thank you. And Venus.
Yes, well, I can only echo what Robin and Natalia would have said thus far in terms of that. Speaking to your banker is very important, and I think just about every commercial bank would have business banking units or personal bankers for SMEs that they can reach out to get the advice that they need. Apart from that, just about every government website outside there, Export TT as well, on the websites, the availability of grants is very well laid out. I went onto a few for myself as well, and I would have seen quite a lot of grants being clearly laid out from NIB all the way down to ADB. And if we would make use of those tools, we would be able to get a lot of information regarding the funding and grants.
Great, thanks.
If I could add one more thing, I forgot. The two things are the TTMA is a great resource. I will let you know this because I sat on the board of TTMA for 8 years. I can tell you guys that there are a lot of trade agreements there. If you need, SMEs need to get help to get product on the ground or to do research. There are resources available in different countries. There's a Jamaica trade desk, for example. Jamaica is one of the biggest local markets we have in the Caribbean. Sorry, not local markets. And I can assure you that the TTMA has a suite of services that are available and funding that they can make available for different things. If you're not aware of how to get your product into these markets, there are trade agreements, there are reciprocal arrangements with some of these other countries, bilateral trade agreements. All those are available on the website and are available through the TTMA. This week, there's an online, the TTMA, which is the Trade and Investment Convention, TIC, is on this week. And because of COVID, it's a virtual free. This is the largest business-to-business gathering of buyers and suppliers in the Caribbean. I can tell you that hundreds of millions of dollars in sales occur through these various seminars, meetings. You can showcase your products. You could meet with people to understand markets in different countries. So I would say to the SMEs, start looking outside, call somebody from TTMA, talk to them. If you have an idea, you want to pitch something somewhere, they will guide you through. They will send you the trade agreements. There's funding available to get your product registered and stuff like that in other countries. There's process out there. So let me just leave it with that.
Sure. Actually, Robin, as you have the floor, so someone in the chat posted a question in response to what you were saying earlier about other foreign currencies. So what they're saying is, do we not need USD before we can purchase any other foreign currency? As an individual, that is what all the major banks told me. Or is there a different process for businesses?
No, the basis for exchange, yes, is the US currency, because of course everybody knows Trinidad and Tobago is domiciled. We use US as the basis for currency trades, and Trinidad and Tobago dollar is not necessarily widely accepted in the Caribbean. So if you have to trade in other currencies, the base of it is US. But the point I was trying to make is, you can sell product not sell it in Trinidad, ship it to St. Lucia. So establish a small market in St. Lucia, you get EC dollars. And you can then use EC dollars to trade against different currencies. So that's the understanding. You have to establish a base for starting off with other currencies that you can set. So we may be able to say to you, I might go to my traders and say, guys, look, I need 10,000, 20,000 US, but I have EC. That's a different conversation versus I need 20,000 US and I have TT.
Gotcha.
I will then look at what my exporters need, or how do I hedge against this EC dollars and or Jamaican dollars, and say, do I have a demand for that? It expands the trader's ability to be able to maneuver across just a one currency scenario.
Sure. Now, for Venus or Natalia, there was a question that came, or actually for you, Robin, as well, but I started Venus. There's a question that came up in the last panel and has come back again. Is there funding in excess of 100 million for companies looking to develop their businesses? And where would be the best place to start looking?
100 million TT?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, let's say it's 100 million US, which is what they had posed in the previous panel.
Right. So the question is there funding available for 100 million US to develop a business?
Yes.
I would say that there's funding available in any currency. Trinidad and Tobago banks are very well capitalized, and there's currency across all the spectrums as far as I'm aware. That's more of a corporate type investment you're talking about because of the size. So that is not either small or medium. So that requires a different expertise. But the short answer to that is yes. The banks, we know that there's about $12-13 billion in excess liquidity in the system. So there is funding available. You just have to go through the steps of meeting your banker, preparing your business case, and actually, engaging them with respect to the project that you want to undertake.
Sure. Now, Venus, there were a couple of questions that were thrown in there that would seem to be more industry specific. So some people are asking about specific financing for agriculture, agro-processing. Someone else asked about the sports industry. What are you aware of, Venus, in terms of industry-specific funding that may be available?
Well, being a corporate manager, we would be lending to businesses involved in basically almost every industry. There's a very wide spectrum of industries, from the energy sector all the way down to agriculture. At the end of the day, the premise for lending remains the same despite the industry that you are engaged in. You, of course, have to have a viable value proposition. You must be able to have confirmed cash flows. It cannot be anything speculative. You must ensure that you have a fallback plan. That's why banks ask for collateral. If it is that something goes wrong or something doesn't pan out, what is your fallback? Do you have a secondary source of cash that can ensure that your facilities remain in good standing? Management experience, all these things are things that we would look at in terms of assessing any credit. And at the end of the day, yes, each industry would have their own peculiarities. However, it must be able to tie back into to exactly what I was just speaking about. So even though it may be something such as software development, I was listening to one of the panelists from the earlier panel speaking, and they were talking about value in innovation and the need for angel investors and these kind of things, because at the end of the day, it's really hard to value software development, that kind of product. You can't really collateralize it. But at the end of the day, do you have an alternatives asset that can actually back it? And even if not, do you have confirmed cash flows that can go with your software development? Do you have a memorandum of understanding if you're still in the development stage in place? Do you have conditional contracts? Do you have these things that can make sure that your cash flows are confirmed? That's in software development. Whereas in the retail environment, it may be different, but you want to make sure that you have a wide market base, something that is readily accepted, to make sure the cash flows are confirmed. So in other words, what I'm saying is, despite the peculiarities of the industry, you can tailor it to make sure that that it comes back to meet the specific criteria that is required for you to get that kind of financing. And all banks are available to make that financing available once you can meet those criteria.
And just to add quickly, Kieran, it all comes back to your ability to translate whatever your project is or whatever your product is to the bank in order to get that financing. So again, you need to make sure that you have your cash flow projections. You need to make sure that you're tax compliant. You need to make sure that you have your business plan that is a business plan that is clearly stating, where you are at right now and what is required for you to grow. So I would really encourage all the SMEs that want to get financing to grow either for their innovation or just generally really pay attention to the basics. And it's not something that is just required for traditional bank financing or debt financing. It's something that those grant funding agencies look at. And I'm sure Chrisan and Jamie could back me up on this, but normally when you're trying to access those kinds of funds, these are the kind of supporting documents that those agencies are going to ask for. They're going to ask for your financials to show evidence that you've been in business. What are your cash flows like? That kind of thing. So it's really important that you make sure you have those basics and they're clearly stating where you're at and what you want to achieve in order to get the financing that you require.
Thank you, Natalia. And with that, you've got the last word in this segment. So I do want to thank yourself, Venus, and Robin for sharing your time, your insight, and your experience to bring some different pictures and definitely a focus on solutions to the SMEs logged on to this morning's session. That brings us to the end of the Q&A. And as I understand it, the questions that we didn't get to, they are going to be collated and passed on. I mean, I know some of the panelists, Natalia for certain, and the others as well, would have shared their email addresses and other contact details in the chat. So make sure to reach out to them directly to further the conversation. So with that, I'll hand back to Mandisa.
Thank you so much to our panel for a vibrant and illuminating discussion. We are now, I think, all clearer about the financing facilities and support systems available within our commercial banking sector, as well as the essential building blocks to a strong application for financing. Thank you as well to our participants for your contributions to our Q&A. I wish you all the best of luck in seeking the financial assistance that you may need going forward. At this time, we'll now take another 5-minute break. So I invite you again to move your bodies and shift your focus so that you can return to us refreshed and ready for our third and final panel. We look forward to seeing you again.